You know that person who, the moment someone starts getting genuinely close to them, suddenly finds a reason to pull back. Maybe they go cold out of nowhere. Maybe they start picking small fights that never existed before. Maybe they cancel plans, create distance, or just quietly disappear right when a relationship starts feeling real. And the strangest thing about this person is that they are not a cold person. They are not heartless. In fact, if you ask the people around them, they will tell you this person is one of the warmest, most caring people they have ever met. They just cannot seem to let anyone fully stay. That person might be you. And if it is, you probably felt something tighten in your chest just now. A quiet, specific discomfort. The kind that shows up when something finally names what you have been living inside for so long. It stopped feeling like a pattern and started feeling like just who you are. So today, we are going to talk about the psychology behind pushing people away. Not the simplified version, the real one. Because this is one of the most misunderstood behavioral patterns in human psychology. And most people who live inside it spend years, sometimes decades, genuinely believing they are the problem, that they are just not built for closeness, that something is simply wrong with them. That is not true. And by the end of this video, I think you will understand why. Let us start with what this pattern actually is, because it is almost never what it looks like from the outside. There is a very common assumption that people who push others away are emotionally unavailable, selfish, maybe even a little arrogant. And sure, for some people, that might be part of it. But for the vast majority, the ones who genuinely struggle to let closeness stay, it is something far more specific and far more painful than that. It is not that they do not want people. It is that wanting people, really wanting them, feels genuinely dangerous. And that danger did not appear out of thin air. It was taught to them, usually early, usually by someone or something that was supposed to make them feel safe and did not. At some point in your life, probably when you were young, you reached out. Maybe you showed someone you needed them. Maybe you got attached. Maybe you trusted someone with something real and vulnerable. And something went wrong. They left without explanation. They were there physically, but completely absent emotionally. They were so unpredictable that loving them meant living in a constant state of bracing for the next thing. Or maybe you simply expressed a need and were made to feel like a burden for having it. And your nervous system, which is extraordinarily good at recognizing patterns, logged that experience with absolute clarity. Closeness leads to pain. Needing people leads to disappointment, or rejection, or loss. So the safest strategy, the only logical one, is to keep people at a distance you can manage. Or, when they get too close anyway, find a way to end it before they get the chance to hurt you first. That is where it starts. And it is important to understand that this was not weakness. This was intelligence. Your mind was protecting you. The problem is that it never got the update that things have changed. Psychologists have a name for what we just described. It is called avoidant attachment, and it falls under John Bowlby's attachment theory, which is one of the most thoroughly researched frameworks in all of modern psychology. Bowlby spent decades studying how our earliest relationships with caregivers create what he called internal working models. Think of these as mental blueprints, templates that tell us, below the level of conscious thought, how relationships work, whether people can be trusted, whether our needs are worth expressing, whether love is something that stays, or something that eventually disappears. For people with avoidant attachment, the internal working model says something like this: the closer someone gets, the more power they have to hurt you. So the mind builds a defense system, and this system is remarkably efficient. It manufactures distance before real intimacy can form. It finds flaws in people who are actually good for you. It creates conflict when things are going too smoothly. It tells you that you need space, that this relationship is not right, that you are better off alone. And here is the detail that I think is the most important and the most heartbreaking. A 2014 study published in the journal Emotion found that people with avoidant attachment show the highest levels of psychological stress not when relationships are going badly, but when intimacy increases, when things get better, when someone gets closer. In other words, the alarm fires loudest precisely when you are getting what you actually want. The better things get, the more dangerous they feel. That is not a character flaw. That is a conditioned response, and there is a significant difference between the two. So what does this actually look like in real life? Let me paint a picture. You have been seeing someone for a few months. Things are genuinely going well. This person is kind. They are consistent. They show up when they say they will. They are interested in who you actually are. And one evening they say something like, "I really like where this is going." And instead of warmth, You feel something that is much closer to panic, a sudden tightening, an urgent need to create space, and almost immediately, your mind starts building a case. You start noticing things about this person that bothered you before, or maybe never bothered you at all. Maybe they are a little too available. Maybe something about the way they communicate feels off. Maybe you are just not sure anymore. Within 2 weeks, you have either ended it or pulled back so far that the relationship quietly dies on its own. And afterward there is a brief moment of relief, followed by that particular hollow loneliness. Not the dramatic grief of a real heartbreak, more like the quiet ache of something you took apart before it had the chance to become real. And the story you tell yourself is always the same. They were not right for you. You just needed space. The timing was wrong. You are just not ready. But if you sit with it honestly, you know the timing was not the issue. You did not choose out of clarity. You chose out of fear. And the most unsettling part of this cycle is that it does not feel like fear when it is happening. It feels like logic. It feels like you are making a rational, self-aware decision. The defense system is that good. This does not only happen in romantic relationships, it shows up in friendships, in family dynamics. Anywhere depth and vulnerability are required. You can be warm, engaged, genuinely present up to a certain point, and then something shifts. A wall comes up, not dramatically, quietly, and people feel it even when they cannot name it. Here is where it gets even more layered. And I think this is the piece that most conversations about this topic completely skip over. For many people who push others away, the identity of being self-sufficient, of not needing anyone, of always being fine, has become load-bearing. It is not just a habit or a behavior. It is who they are. It is the foundation their entire sense of self-worth is built on. Being alone feels like strength. Needing someone feels like weakness. Depending on people feels like a vulnerability they simply cannot afford. So when someone actually shows up for them, when someone is genuinely consistent, present, and safe, it does not feel like relief. It creates a strange kind of internal conflict, because accepting their care means admitting you need it. And if you need it, the whole image starts to crack. The capable, self-sufficient, always fine version of you suddenly feels fragile, and fragile feels dangerous. So the mind does what it has always done. It builds a case. It finds reasons to doubt the person. It manufactures problems. It convinces you the relationship is not sustainable, that you are not compatible, that it is smarter to leave now than to get more attached and risk being devastated later. The cruel irony is that this entire process feels like rational, self-aware decision-making. It does not feel like a defense mechanism. It feels like clarity. And that is exactly what makes it so difficult to break. Now let us talk about the cost of this. Because I think people who live this pattern often do not fully allow themselves to see what it is actually taking from them. Every time you push someone away, you also reinforce the internal belief that closeness is not something you are allowed to have, that you are somehow different from people who get to have stable, lasting relationships. The walls get slightly thicker, the pattern becomes slightly more automatic, and after enough cycles, you stop letting people get close enough to even feel the alarm. You manage the distance so efficiently that the threat never even materializes. You also train the people around you without meaning to. They stop checking in because you always seem fine. They stop offering help because you always decline it. They learn to love you from a distance because that is the only distance you have made available. And then a very specific kind of loneliness settles in. Not dramatic, not loud, just a constant, low-level hum underneath everything. And you start wondering whether this is just who you are, whether you are someone who is simply not meant for deep, lasting connection. You are meant for it. You just never got to build the foundation that would make it feel safe. I want to speak directly to the people watching this who recognize themselves, who are maybe sitting with a quiet sense of frustration right now because they have understood this pattern for years and understanding it has not changed it. I want you to hear this clearly. Knowing why you do something does not automatically stop you from doing it. That is just how deep conditioning works. The rational mind can fully understand avoidant attachment, can read every book, watch every video, and the nervous system will still fire the exact same alarm the next time someone gets close. Because the nervous system does not learn through information, it learns through experience. But insight is not useless. It is not the whole solution, but it is the beginning of one. So what actually moves the needle? What does the real work look like? It is not one breakthrough moment. It is not a single conversation that changes everything. It is something far more gradual and far less dramatic. It is noticing, in the moment when you want to pull away, that the urge is there, and pausing long enough to ask yourself one question: is this real danger? Or is this familiar danger? Because those are not the same thing. To a nervous system shaped by early loss or instability, safety itself can feel suspicious. Someone being consistently kind can trigger the alarm just as much as someone being cruel, because both feel unfamiliar. The nervous system does not distinguish between a threat and something that simply does not match the old pattern. It just fires. The work is in tolerating the discomfort of staying, of letting someone be close for one more day, one more week, without manufacturing a reason to leave, of asking for something small, something vulnerable, and then noticing that the world did not end, that the person did not leave, that you are still whole. It is also, and this surprises most people, about grief. A lot of the real work here is grieving a younger version of yourself, the one who wanted closeness and reached out and was not met, who trusted someone and got hurt, who needed people and was made to feel like a burden for it. That younger version is still in there, and the old strategy is still running because it was protecting them. It needs to be acknowledged, it needs to be honored, before it will step aside. Working with a therapist, particularly someone trained in attachment-focused or somatic approaches, can be genuinely transformative here. Not because anything is broken in you, but because some wounds need a witness, and sometimes the most powerful thing that changes this pattern is simply experiencing one safe relationship where closeness does not lead to pain. The nervous system learns through repetition, through lived experience, not through logic alone. And the people in your life who want to stay, the ones you keep finding reasons to push away, some of them are genuinely safe, not perfect, not flawless, but consistent enough, present enough, real enough to stay if you let them. The walls you built were never a character flaw. They were architecture, intelligent, necessary architecture built by a version of you who needed protection and did not have it. That person deserved better, and so do you. You were not built to go through life alone. Nobody is. And the version of you that finally lets someone stay, that allows themselves to be known, to need, and to be needed in return, that is not the weaker version of you. That is the bravest version of you that has ever existed.